Welcome to today's Explainer. We're trying something a bit of an experiment today. We are going to break down 15 distinct global headlines, and get this, they were all recorded on a single day, August 18th, 2026. By isolating just this one 24-hour window, we're going to uncover the completely fascinating, highly interconnected web of modern geopolitics. As you'll see, a single event in one hemisphere can create this massive ripple effect that touches literally everything, from international shipping lanes all the way down to domestic law enforcement. So here is our roadmap for today. We're starting with the Middle East, conflict and diplomacy. Then we'll look at Russia, Ukraine, and drones. Third, Asian security posture shifts. And we'll wrap up with global elections and law. All right, diving right into Section 1, Middle East conflict and diplomacy. The physical volatility over there is just incredibly high right now. On August 18th, the UK Maritime Trade Operations reported that a commercial vessel was actually struck by an unknown projectile right in the Strait of Hormuz. It caused engine room damage and, unfortunately, a crew casualty. This puts intense pressure on what is basically a crucial global shipping choke point. And meanwhile, just to the west, 8 Israeli airstrikes hit the Abu al-Dahor military airbase in northwestern Syria, directly targeting their runways and ammo storage. So, militarily speaking, the region is firing on all cylinders. But right in the middle of all this intense physical conflict, this totally fascinating diplomatic proposal emerged out of talks in Egypt. Hamas leaders communicated a willingness to actually demilitarize the Gaza Strip to U.S. envoy Jared Kushner. And that brings up a monumental question for global security. Can a demilitarized Gaza actually be enforced? And, shortly after that message, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with Kushner to evaluate the proposal. Now, the political skepticism here is, as you might guess, sky high. Because it's one thing to agree to demilitarization on a piece of paper, right? But it's an entirely different, incredibly complex reality to build the enforcement mechanisms required to actually guarantee it on the ground. Okay, the web gets even more tangled up over in northern Iraq. Targeted drone strikes hit Kurdistan regional government offices. Specifically, we're talking about the Prime Minister's office and the intelligence chief's home. Regional authorities immediately pointed the finger at Iran. Now, Tehran denied it, but the escalation was so swift that Turkish President Erdogan actually stepped in as a mediator, calling U.S. President Donald Trump to urge direct U.S.-Iran talks. Just think about that for a second. A localized strike instantly triggered presidential-level mediation. Moving on to Section 2, Russia, Ukraine, and drones. 600. Let that sink in for a second. That staggering number represents the massive swarm of drones Ukrainian forces launched overnight toward the Moscow region and the surrounding Russian oblasts. Russian defense officials reported intercepting about 180 of them, but they obviously still had to respond to crash sites and damage across multiple locations. We are literally witnessing drone warfare being deployed on a truly historic, unprecedented scale. But, while Moscow was dealing with these high-tech drone swarms, the tragic reality of traditional kinetic conflict didn't just stop. A Russian missile struck a village in the Kharkiv region, leaving 10 civilians dead and heavily damaging vital local infrastructure. It is a very sobering reminder of the devastating human toll that's happening every single day right behind the geopolitical chessboard. So, how in the world do these totally diverse theaters actually connect? Well, it's through a highly cyclical supply chain. European intelligence indicates Russia has been actively shipping drone components, ammunition, and explosives back to Iran via the Caspian Sea maritime routes. The purpose? To replenish Tehran's stockpiles. It's this wild reversal of historical norms. A global superpower is essentially relying on a regional power to keep its war machine running, linking European battlefields directly to Middle Eastern military capabilities. All right, part 3. Asian security posture shifts. Over in the highly contested South China Sea, a pretty shocking mechanical vulnerability was just exposed. A U.S. Navy destroyer suffered a complete power loss for 4 consecutive days during operations last month. That left the crew completely without air conditioning or basic power systems. Turns out you don't always need a high-tech missile to neutralize a multi-billion-dollar warship, right? Sometimes you just need a mechanical failure. It goes to show that operational readiness and basic infrastructure are just as absolutely crucial as firepower. And parallel to this, we're seeing some pretty big shifts in long-standing alliances. Washington and Seoul are actually actively scaling back their joint Ulchi Freedom Shield military drills. In response to this, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung emphasized that while the U.S. alliance is obviously foundational, South Korea really needs to expand its independent national defense capabilities. So it's a very significant strategic pivot towards self-reliance. And finally, Section 4, Global Elections and Law. Let's zoom in on a very specific, kind of controversial law enforcement tactic: Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA-controlled deliveries. This is a highly calculated move where authorities actually allow illicit drug shipments, and yes, that includes fentanyl, to reach communities so they can track and dismantle the broader distribution networks. The U.S. Department of Justice Inspector General just opened a formal review into this practice. It's a hugely complex legal debate, weighing immediate public safety right against the long-term goal of disrupting these massive criminal cartels. Just to give you a sense of the sheer volume of global governance happening on this single day, let's do a quick rapid-fire sweep. Over in Zambia, Hakainde Hichilema secured a second presidential term with 60% of the vote. In India, massive pre-Independence Day counterterrorism operations led to over 200 arrests, claims, by the way, that Pakistan swiftly rejected. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council convened an emergency session over drone strikes hitting vital oil refineries in Libya. And back home in the USA, a federal appeals court rejected a policy regarding unconfirmed U.S. attorneys. So from the ballot box to the courtroom, the gears of domestic policy just literally never stop turning. So when you step back and look at all of these connected ripples, from massive drone warfare in Europe, to circular supply chains in the Caspian Sea, to startling mechanical failures in the South China Sea, it really forces us to ask one absolutely vital question. In a world where global alliances seem to shift by the hour, what does a truly independent national defense look like tomorrow? I really hope this explainer has helped you see some of the hidden wires connecting our world. Thanks so much for joining you today, and as always, keep asking the big questions.